Welcome to Unlocking Buddhism. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of Buddhism and Hinduism? Probably yes, right? Maybe in a class, a video, a movie, or even when seeing an image of someone meditating cross-legged, incense in the background, and that peaceful vibe in the air. But here's the thing, even though these two names sound similar, and we often hear about them in the same context, they're actually quite different. The problem is, hardly anyone explains that difference clearly. So it's easy to mix everything up. Some people even think it's all the same. But it's not. The truth is, both Buddhism and Hinduism have deep teachings, but they're also full of symbols, hard to pronounce words, and ancient stories. And if no one breaks it down in a simple way, it feels like you need a whole dictionary just to understand the basics, right? But don't worry. Today I'm going to explain all of this like we're just having a casual chat. Like the kind of talk you'd have with a friend on a chill afternoon. No complicated words, no fluff, and best of all, in a way even a kid could understand. So stick with me, because we're going on a little journey through time, learning amazing stories, discovering what these philosophies have in common and where they see things totally differently. And in the end, you might even realize that understanding these ideas can help you see your own life in a whole new way. Have you ever wondered what the real difference is between Buddhism and Hinduism? They seem so alike, right? Reincarnation, meditation, monks, spirituality. At first glance, it's easy to mix them up. But once we start digging deeper, we realize they actually see life, suffering, and the idea of liberation in very different ways. Today, I want to invite you on a journey that's light, but also deeply meaningful. This isn't a boring class or a religious lecture. It's a conversation about how these two ancient philosophies view existence. And I promise, it'll make way more sense than you'd expect. To kick things off, here's a metaphor I love. Imagine a big, strong tree with deep roots spreading through the soil, branches reaching up to the sky, and leaves dancing with the wind. That tree represents Hinduism, a rich, ancient tradition with countless layers. Rooted in centuries of spiritual thought that shaped much of Eastern philosophy. Now imagine that, at some point, a new branch grows from that tree. It shares the same sap, came from the same trunk, but it grows in a different direction, taking on its own shape and seeking its own light. That branch would be Buddhism. That's because Buddhism was born within the Hindu context in India over 2,500 years ago, with Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. He grew up surrounded by Hindu values, knew its teachings well, but at some point, he felt the need to find a different way to understand human suffering. So based on his own direct and profound experience through meditation and self-inquiry, he proposed a new path. A path that, although rooted in the same philosophical soil, branched out in a whole new direction. These two philosophies agree on many things. Both believe life involves suffering, that we live in a cycle called samsara, the wheel of birth and death, and that there are ways to break free from all of it. But here's where the differences begin. In Buddhism, the approach is simple, direct, and practical. We suffer because we're attached to things, people, ideas, emotions. We want to control everything. We want things to go our way, and when they don't, we suffer. So what Buddhism teaches is, let go. Learn to observe life as it is, without clinging to what's always changing. Because everything changes. Nothing stays, and understanding that is liberating. In Hinduism, the approach is different. It also acknowledges suffering and the cycle of samsara, but it believes there's something eternal within us, the Atman, our true soul. And this soul is, in essence, the same as Brahman, the supreme consciousness, the all. Liberation happens when we realize we are not this body, nor this mind, nor these fears. We are divine. We are part of the whole. And that realization is called moksha. While Buddhism says there is no fixed self, everything is in constant flow, change, and emptiness. Hinduism affirms that there is, in fact, an eternal, deep, and sacred self. Now here's something interesting. In Buddhism, there is no creator God. They don't deny God. They just say it doesn't really matter. The focus is on the here and now, on how we live, think, feel, and act. There's no point in debating if there's a heaven or hell, or who created the universe if you're trapped in negative thoughts, resentment, and suffering. What matters is awakening, finding clarity, compassion, and wisdom within. Hinduism, on the other hand, is full of gods, thousands of them. And that might seem confusing, especially to people from monotheistic cultures where there's one god with one name, one form, and one clear role. But there's a secret behind this diversity. These gods aren't magical beings in the sky, deciding humanity's fate, like many might think. They're symbolic expressions of nature's forces and aspects of the human experience. Archetypes. Each one represents an energy, a quality, or a universal principle that also lives within us. Ganesha, for example, represents the removal of obstacles, but also practical intelligence, the wisdom to open paths. Shiva is the Lord of transformation, creative destruction, who ends cycles so new ones can begin. Lakshmi symbolizes prosperity, not just material, but emotional and spiritual too, abundance in all its forms. Krishna represents divine love, surrender, the joyful dance of life, the balance between duty and pleasure. There's also Saraswati, goddess of knowledge and the arts. Hanuman, symbol of strength, loyalty, and devotion. Durga, the warrior goddess who embodies feminine power and fights ignorance and fear. And so on. Each deity is like a doorway to a part of ourselves, a tool for connecting with the sacred. Hindu practice uses these symbols through rituals, prayers, stories, and mantras as forms of active meditation. It's not just about asking for blessings, but about cultivating certain qualities in your heart and mind. When invoking a deity, the practitioner is activating that energy within. It's an inner transformation process, guided by images and sounds that deeply touch the collective unconscious. That's why Hinduism, despite its colorful and mythological outer appearance, is profoundly psychological and introspective. And here's a curious thing. Buddhism also has figures that look like Hindu gods at first glance. They're called deities too, and names like Tara, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, Vajrapani are part of this symbolic universe. But there's a big difference in how they're seen. In Buddhism, these deities aren't worshipped as external beings in a higher realm handing out blessings or punishments. They're understood as symbolic representations of qualities that exist within us, deep aspects of our mind, and our purest potential. Tara, for instance, represents active compassion, the urge to act for the good of others. Avalokiteshvara embodies universal compassion. Manjushri symbolizes sharp wisdom, the ability to clearly discern what's real and what's illusion. Vajrapani represents inner power, the courage to transform. When a Buddhist meditates on these figures, recites their mantras, or visualizes their forms, they're not making magical requests like talking to a higher being expecting help. They're connecting with qualities that already exist within. It's like lighting a candle in the dark and finally seeing what's always been there but hidden. This practice is deeply transformative because it doesn't depend on anything external. It starts with the idea that everything we need is already within us. It's just covered up by layers of fear, ego, distraction, and insecurity. Meditating on a deity is, at its core, an exercise in remembering who we truly are. It's looking inward and recognizing our own capacity to love, understand, act with courage and clarity, and that's one of Buddhism's most beautiful and powerful aspects. It puts the responsibility and the power back in our hands. A key concept in Buddhism is samsara, and unlike what many think, samsara isn't a physical place. It's not hell, or another planet, or a literal prison. It's actually a mental state, a kind of ongoing confusion we live in when we're ruled by ego, attachment, fear, anger, and ignorance. It's when everything we feel and think comes from a cloudy, reactive, automatic place. We suffer because we're trapped in this way of existing, where everything feels solid, urgent, permanent. We believe we are this body, this name, this story, and we forget that all of it is constantly changing. It's like being in a dream without realizing you're dreaming. And that's where the big contrast comes in. Nirvana. Contrary to what many believe, Nirvana isn't paradise or heaven, or some kind of prize. It's a state of deep clarity and lucidity. It's when the mind calms, purifies, and starts seeing things as they truly are, impermanent, interconnected, in constant transformation. You understand that emotions come and go, that pain isn't eternal, and that there's something more stable, more silent, more real beneath it all. Nirvana is the end of confusion. It's waking up from the dream. It's realizing you don't need to fight reality all the time. You just need to see it with more awareness and compassion. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a reflection. Buddhism and Hinduism aren't just religions in the traditional sense of the word. They go far beyond dogmas, rituals, or commandments. They're ways of seeing the world, interpreting life's events, and facing the inevitable pain and uncertainty we all go through. They're internal maps that help us find our way when everything feels lost. They don't require you to believe in anything specific. It doesn't matter if you believe in gods or not, if you meditate daily, or have never sat cross-legged on a mat. It doesn't even matter if you consider yourself spiritual, religious, or totally skeptical. What really matters is that these philosophies offer deep, practical tools to live with more presence, balance, and awareness. They teach us to observe, to question, to release what hurts, and to embrace what transforms. At their core, they invite us to look within, to live more authentically and meaningfully. And honestly, who doesn't want that, right? So that's it. In the end, Buddhism and Hinduism aren't just complicated names or distant things from the other side of the world. They're different ways of seeing life, dealing with suffering, and searching for peace and meaning. One is about letting go of what holds you back. The other, about remembering who you truly are. And both, each in their own way, point inward. The truth is, it's not about picking a side. It's about understanding that there are paths, and that knowing these paths can help you walk your own more consciously. If this made sense to you, if something here touched you in some way, drop a comment down below. Tell me what you thought, what stood out to you most, or even which of these philosophies speaks more to you. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who'd also love to reflect on all this.